About a quarter century ago, Amazon said it wanted to sell anything and everything a person would want to buy online. Since then, revenues have grown 38,000%. Every time it sells a new product, even veteran rivals fear getting Amazoned.
I would never bet against Amazon. They effectively have unlimited resources.
Up until recently, one of the very few areas Amazon wasn't disrupting: cars. But now it is making moves. The latest deal is to help sell used cars owned by the rental company Hertz. It could be a boon for Hertz. Shares popped on the news. It could also help Amazon build up what is still a fledgling business. One loser could be dealers.
When you get a giant like Amazon retailing, the largest supply of used cars in the nation, coming from the large rental companies, it can scale and escalate very, very quickly.
Hertz has had its share of struggles over the last several years. It filed for bankruptcy in 2020 as rental car demand crashed in the early months of the coronavirus pandemic. It relisted in 2021. Shares fell nearly 10% on the first day. Management said in 2024 it was undertaking a critical transformation. Activist investor Bill Ackman took a stake in the company in April 2025, saying it was undervalued. Shares soared.
A 4.1% position in Hertz as of December 31st. That news sending shares sharply higher in the session, as you see. I'm told from a person familiar that the stake is actually much, much higher than that.
Q2 2025, the company said, was its best quarter in 2 years.
Gil West, the CEO, would say, hey, important progress made over the past year and a half, since he's been there, but much more work to be done. They still need to get more efficient on direct operating costs, but reselling and lowering their fleet costs is also part of that.
In 2023, Amazon said it was getting into the auto retail business. First came a partnership with Hyundai, which has since expanded. The e-commerce giant so far is keeping no inventory and is not actually selling the cars itself. It's a showroom with many of the usual Amazon shopping features. Buyers can fill out paperwork and secure financing, pretty much do everything except take delivery of the actual car.
Amazon is really a listing service on steroids for dealers. That's the play.
The real money for Amazon, banks said, is in digital advertising, which made $56.2 billion for the company in 2024.
They clearly set that up as a strategy to go after Google and Meta. It's high margin. I think what Amazon is trying to do is capture as much data as possible on the consumer, so then they can target or provide the consumer with much more targeted advertising.
Hertz has about 560,000 vehicles in its fleet. Rental companies sell these cars off after about 18 to 20 months of renting them out, although Hertz said that as of September 2025, 80% of its fleet was less than a year old.
They resell a couple 100,000 cars every year just in the US. We're talking about several $1 billion worth of inventory.
There are several ways a rental company sells off a fleet. Some cars go into auctions where dealers buy them up. Less than 10% in Hertz's case, but around 15 to 20% for the rest of the industry. Some cars are sold directly to dealers. Hertz sells much of its fleet directly to consumers. It lists cars on its own website, sells online through used car seller Carvana, and lists on sites like AutoTrader and Cars.com. The company has 45 sales locations in the US alone. It also has a rent-to-buy program. Hertz and Amazon declined CNBC's request for an interview. John Pasamato is a former Chrysler Plymouth dealer and an auto industry entrepreneur. In an open letter to the head of the National Automobile Dealers Association, Pasamato said this partnership poses a threat to dealers.
Back 30 years ago, when it became very obvious that the larger rental companies were setting up retailing stores right near dealers and putting through used cars, dealers realized that. And they were selling cars cheaper than dealers could because they're acquiring them way cheaper than dealers can.
Rental car companies buy vehicles from automakers in large quantities. They get discounts. Pasamato himself was a fleet dealer. These aren't just bulk discounts, Pasamato said. There is a kind of discount called the stair-step incentive.
It's not talked about a lot. It's under confidentiality, but everybody knows they exist.
Basically, the more you buy, the bigger your discount on each vehicle. Let's say you buy 1,000, you might get 500 back a unit. Buy 5,000, you get 2,000 back. The idea is that these large fleet purchases help automakers keep production relatively consistent from year to year, and the vehicles historically would end up in the hands of dealers anyway, either through wholesale used car auctions or through direct sales.
What I see with the Hertz Amazon situation is what happened 30 years ago, but sort of on steroids, right? Now you can sell cars digitally. Now there's a web. Now you have Amazon, the biggest merchandiser retailer in the country.
The second threat is competition for cars. Here's a breakdown of where dealers got used vehicles in 2024. About 20% came from auctions. Steve Greenfield estimates there are about 300 auction companies in the United States. The biggest are Manheim, Odessa, and ACV. Carvana bought Odessa's physical U.S. auction locations in 2022. Manheim, the biggest, is privately owned by Cox Enterprises, but it says it facilitates the sale of about 7 million vehicles per year, representing about $50 billion in value and $2.6 billion in revenue. When auction company ACV went public in 2021, it estimated about 22 million used vehicles were sold through the wholesale channel on an annual basis, generating about $230 billion in sales. At the time, ACV estimated its total addressable market was worth about $10.7 billion. Rental companies make up about 5% of the cars going into the auction market. The others are dealers, off-lease cars, repossessions, and other fleet vehicles. By going directly to consumers, Hertz can sell its cars for retail prices rather than a lower wholesale price and can avoid whatever other fees and friction that might come with offloading the vehicle to an auctioneer.
It is going to potentially put pressure on auctions if other commercial sellers like Hertz start bypassing them and selling through these channels that allow them to achieve retail pricing.
That in turn means there are fewer cars going through auction, where again, dealers buy 20% of their used car stock. The concern is that potentially anyone that would feed cars into auctions or sell directly to dealers could bypass those channels entirely and simply sell directly to the consumer.
So if I'm a dealer and I used to buy 30 cars a week from Hertz, and I find that my consumers who are buying cars retail off my lot love these Hertz cars, and those dry up, to your point, it's like it just really constrains supply overall.
The impact on car dealers, I think, is negligible when you do the math. With Hertz, when they were going bankrupt, when they were going through bankruptcy, there was a lot of commentary about an angst, so to speak, of they're going to offload 500,000 units. It's going to crater the used car industry. It's going to crater prices.
But Banks said if you spread Hertz's fleet across the entire landscape of new and used dealerships out there, it works out to just 1 or 2 cars per dealership.
It's 1 vehicle per dealer, essentially. And if you're just counting new car dealers, it's 2.3. So I don't think that's a big issue.
Hertz isn't cutting anybody off. This is just another avenue for them to possibly reach customers they wouldn't have.
Pasamato said that yes, Hertz's inventory might be 500,000 cars, but the total rental fleet is about 2.5 million, about 19% of the 12.8 million used cars sold through franchise dealerships. If this plan with Hertz goes well, Amazon could start offering the same deal to other rental companies.
We're in a digital age, so that things like this can pilot and then go to scale extremely quickly. So everyone should watch as opposed to wake up one morning and find out that hey, you remember that lucrative used car business we had for 1 and 2 year old used units? Well, they're gone.
The other reason to manage expectations, this isn't how Amazon usually does retail.
Ultimately, what's given them heartburn consistently is the fact that with any other product category, they can control the unpacking experience. With automotive retail, it's totally different, right? That last mile is fulfilled at a dealership where they have almost zero visibility and zero control of the unpacking experience.
Still, this is suggesting that the older ways of doing business are under pressure.
The greater story there is that it's this battle of inventory, certainly used vehicle inventory, that's going on between car dealers, and they're competing with each other, obviously. And then you've got the new player, Carvana, CarMax, which is an old player, but still new to this game of customer acquisition.
Dealers are adapting. Nearly 3/4 of cars come from vehicle trade-ins.
The auction has become a pretty costly channel for the average dealer. So they'd much rather buy a trade-in from a consumer than have to go to the auction and compete with other dealers for cars.
They're even buying some of them, nearly 10%, off the street. They've been doing this for a while, but the practice exploded during the pandemic when there were few cars available, new or used. How much used car sales contribute to a dealership's profit varies. One 2019 Edmunds report, pre-pandemic, said about 25% on average. It's a smaller share among the large publicly traded dealership groups, about 7 to 11% in 2024. The average dealer, and this really is just an average, sold 189 used vehicles in Q2 2025 and made a profit of $1,567, about $600 less than what it would make off of selling new vehicles. But service and parts make up nearly half of each of the major public dealer groups' profits, and that's typical of the broader industry. Finance and insurance, often called F&I, is also important. Those are things that dealers sell when you buy a car, like loans and warranties.
When I don't get the chance to sell that used car to a retail consumer, then I have zero chance of retaining that consumer as a service customer where half of my profit is generated. So it does pose a problem.
In the United States, new car dealers are protected by franchise laws. In the earlier days of the auto industry, manufacturers decided on selling through franchise dealers so they could focus on product development and manufacturing and not have to build out their own sales and distribution channels. The laws were passed to protect the businesses making those investments from the possibility of an automaker deciding to open up a store across the street from one of its own dealers. These franchise laws are arguably the main stumbling block keeping digital companies from selling cars to the public. Manufacturers such as Tesla, which has no dealers, has fought numerous legal battles to sell its cars directly to its customers. Other brands, such as Rivian and Lucid, have followed suit. Even Volkswagen's forthcoming Scout brand is opting for a direct sales approach. VW and Audi dealers are suing. Honda and Sony have partnered to make a new car called the Afeela. Same thing, they plan to sell direct. Honda dealers are also suing.
The market is evolving pretty quickly, and I think that, we all need to be paying attention to how quickly the Carvanas and the Amazons of the world get traction, because there can be downstream implications of this.